Welcome back to the 8-Man Breakdowns podcast. This is where we discuss all phases of the game of football, including philosophy, play concepts, questions, and more. Today's guest is head coach Steve Tiernan. Coach Tiernan is the head coach of the Osborne Bulldogs of Osborne, Kansas. He's heading into his 20th season overall as head coach. I was lucky enough to have Coach Tiernan as my K-12 PE teacher and high school football coach back in the day, and I also got to coach under him as an assistant for 3 years at Solomon and 1 at Osborne. So 4 years altogether coaching under him, basically known him my entire life, and definitely one of the people who geared my path towards coaching. So, Coach, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me.
Coach, start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your football background, how you started coaching football.
Well, basically, that could be a long story there. I've been a lot of places, from Liberal High School, which is 5A, to Baileyville B&B, which was 1A 8-man, to Osborne to Solomon, back to Osborne. So I've kind of been there, done that, been a lot of places. I played in Tipton High School when I went to high school, and then I went to college and played, and realized real fast I wasn't very good at football, so I thought I better coach it rather than play it.
So was there anyone specifically in your life that led you to your path as a coach? Would you say anybody that kind of geared you towards that?
I wouldn't say any one in particular. I was lucky enough to have a lot of good coaches. So, I mean, you kind of always, respected those guys and just kind of, I won't say wanted to be like them, but basically in the bottom line is, after I went to college and realized I'm probably not going to make the NFL because I couldn't even hardly play in college, and I can't do a lot of other things. I'm not going to fix a lot of stuff that's broken. So I just chose, I'm going to coach football. And like I said, from then I've just met so many good people, so many good coaches, and it's just been quite a ride as far as that goes, just the relationships that you come up with all these other guys.
So you said Liberal and obviously playing at Tipton and then bouncing around a bunch of different 8-man schools, Baylorville, Osborne, Solomon, back to Osborne. You've kind of kept the same offensive style throughout. Was that something like you guys did in high school? Did you steal that style of offense from what you did in high school, or was that something you came up with, over the course of your coaching career?
Oh, I mean, I don't know that there's any coach that's going to tell you I invented this or this, because most everything, 99% of coaching stuff is stolen from somebody, whether it's a clinic or a film or watching somebody else, just another game. But I would say I learned a lot at Liberal. Some of it was what we ran in high school, but for the most part, I learned a lot Liberal. And then I would say kind of what's made us the most successful is, yes, we do have our base stuff that we try to always do, but any coach that's going to ever be successful is going to do what the team strengths. I could say, boy, we're a passing team. If you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to be a very good passing team. So you got to find another way to try to win. But I think between the coaches I've had, and I've had some very good assistant coaches, and like I said, I've just learned a lot from other people that basically teach or coach to your strengths. Don't try to, doesn't matter if I like to pass. If we can't pass, you can't pass, and vice versa. So just trying to stay with our strengths.
So speaking on that a little bit, what, if anything, would you say maybe separates your program from others? Something maybe you do differently, I guess. And like you said, most coaches don't invent anything. Football is a copycat game for sure. But what would you say maybe you do differently that separates your program from others?
I would probably say, as much as anything, and it kind of goes away from what I just answered, but is consistency. We just stay kind of with the same stuff year after year after year. And of course, you do tweak it to fit your strengths. But so the junior high kids are already running our stuff. By the time they're seniors, they're either pretty good at it or you're probably not a very good team. And the summer weights, just the weight programs year round. I mean, we have guys that work really hard, which I will say that I think that's where most games are probably won, is in the off season. And nobody really likes to hear that, because as a coach, you want to say, well, God, I called out one play, so we won the big game. It probably goes back to what you did in July as to how you're going to do in November. And so far, at least, I mean, I've had very good classes that come through and work hard and take it very important, or very, very serious. And that's it. Even the summer weights kind of the same. They know what to expect. They come in and they just get after it.
So you said you kind of stick with consistency, and the younger classes get used to what you're doing, and then they know with the expectation when they get to high school, But the majority of places you've been, I guess you've also coached football and track. Does that have a correlation or relationship, I guess, to football or how football turns out? I guess what would you say to that?
Oh, there's no doubt, no doubt. There's no bigger relationship between the two sports than football and track. I mean, if you can run fast, usually can find somewhere to put you on the football field. And if you can throw a shot put a long ways, you can usually find somewhere to put you. And I'll tell you what, another one that this summer I coached a lot of baseball. We had a good baseball team and just got to talk to a lot of coaches there as well. And they were all saying how baseball and football kind of go hand in hand, which I've never thought of that, never heard of that, never even considered that. But they gave me many examples. I mean, of guys that are playing pro football or baseball that in college did both. And I can see a lot of correlation there as well. I mean, between football and baseball. Now, baseball is probably not as physically demanding sport as football or track is, but still the hand-eye coordination. And probably the biggest thing I've noticed in baseball is you kind of got to be a gamer in the fact you got to think a play ahead at all times. If it's hit to my left, I'm going to do this. If it's hit to my right, I'm going to do that. And so it's kind of more of a thinking man game. But as far as the coordination, it's still got to be there. But yes, track does definitely correlate with football a lot.
And then another thing you're saying there, I mean, we're talking about multiple sports here, and I was just talking to you about this recently, not that long ago, but getting kids to be involved in multiple sports. What's something that you do specifically, to keep kids from specializing in one sport? I mean, what would you say, I guess, to get them involved in football, track, or even baseball in the summer? What's something you do to get them involved?
Yeah, that's the one coming from a small school. If they don't do them all, you're not going to have all those teams. And like I said, I'm in a 1A school right now that has cross country, girls tennis, basketball, football, track, volleyball. They also have wrestling. And there's something else I can't even think what it is, but there's just a lot of competition there that if the kids don't do 2 sports or 3 sports, you don't even have those other sports because there's not enough kids to go around. And in the summers, I fight basketball a lot. And I don't know if there's any basketball coaches listening. I mean, I'm not mad at you guys, but basketball, like they're just trying to make it a year-round sport. They play all summer. They play just all the time. And we're kind of making a breakthrough there where I think we do have a lot of kids playing baseball. And I mean, I don't know that you can see the difference, but just the injuries. If you're doing the same thing all the time year round, you're going to be very prevalent to an injury. So I really do. I push the playing everything as hard as I can. Now, what does make that hard is like in the weight room, I coach or teach weights year round, is there's never an off season. So there's never that season that you can really just get after it. Let's get stronger. Because once football's over, they go to basketball. Once basketball's over, we go to track. And then, like I say, summer's more, in my mind, to maintain everything we gained for the last 9 months. Let's maintain that until August and then start over again.
So here, real quick, changing gears back to your football season last year. What would you say? Well, tell us a little bit about last year. What, if anything, would you change if you could do it over again? Or what was the high point of the year? What did you learn most about your team? Tell us a little about last year.
Oh, last year, I mean, I remember we had the parents meeting last year, and I told them at the parents meeting, I said, it's the first year in many that we're going to be 2 deep at every position, which you guys that coach 8-man know what that means. And it's very rare to be able to do that. Usually if one guy gets hurt, you got to move 3 guys to make it work. But we were 2 deep at every position, so everybody's practicing that position. So if somebody does get hurt, tired, whatever the case may be, you throw Billy in and Billy knows what to do because that's the position he always practices. And it was probably 3 weeks into the season that we just started falling apart, injury after injury. And by the end of the year, we were so banged up that, I mean, you had guards playing running back. I mean, that was probably the biggest key to last year or downfall last year, which injuries happen. I've been very fortunate, knock on wood. I think that's the first year that I've coached in 20 years that injuries have limited how far we could go in the playoffs. I think we could have made a run last year, but we weren't very healthy by the end of the year, and that ended it pretty quick.
So what would you specifically say you look forward to most this season? I mean, I know you said being 2 deep last year. Is that something you'll be able to do again this year, or what are you looking forward to most this year?
Well, if there's ever a good thing about injuries, it's the next year, for the fact we had a lot of guys that are back that had to play last year, and they probably weren't ready to play, but they had to play because we were out of guys and everybody was hurt. So we do have all those guys back. And by the end of the year, I mean, it's like I said, some of those guys had to play from week 3 on. And by the end of the year, some of them actually showed a lot of improvement and looked pretty good. And like I said, they've worked hard since then. And I really look forward to seeing those guys go. We only have one freshman out, which that's very different, but I'll tell you what, I think he's gonna be pretty good. And we just had our parents meeting last night. And I told them that there's years I've had 30 guys out football, 33 guys out football, in fact. And you can't hardly feel good about putting 5 of them on the field. This year, I think we're gonna have 15 guys out, and I truly do mean this. I don't feel bad if like 12 of them are on the field. I think we have just a bunch of guys that really like the game and have worked hard to be good at the game. So I'm just very interested to see how that's gonna work out.
Here, a couple more questions here, Coach, but piggybacking off of that, saying you have 12 guys that you feel comfortable out there. Some coaches, might not even have 12 guys. How would you say you deal with depth, playing with low roster numbers? What's the expectation there? Do kids have to know multiple positions, or both sides of the ball all the time, or be ready to go at any point? Or how do you address that with low numbers? What's the biggest thing there with low roster numbers?
I would say more than anything, the last couple of years, once our numbers did get down there, was we'd run plays. I mean, I'd call a play, we'd run a play, and maybe just the backs are running the play. And the line is just watching. The line already knows what to do. You're going to watch and see what the backs are going to do, which gives them a better understanding of what they need to do so the backs can hopefully gain some yards. And God forbid everybody else gets hurt, in case that lineman has to go to the backfield, they at least have a clue of what's going on. A lot of those linemen probably down set hut, they're looking for, they don't have a clue what the backs are doing. So we did spend more time on having the line watch the backs, and then vice versa. We'd have the backs watch the line as well, just so everybody had a better understanding. And probably one thing I talk about more than anything is if I'm talking to Billy, that means the rest of you guys ought to probably be listening, even though you don't play guard or end or running back or quarterback or wherever it is, just in case, because you never know. The more knowledge you can absorb, the more things you can figure out, and more positions obviously the better we're going to do and the more likelihood that you're going to be playing.
So here, last question, Coach. Basically, this is just, what would you say, because you've been coaching, how many years you've been coaching now? I honestly forgot.
I think it's 20. I'm not even positive that I've been a head coach. I think this is 20.
Okay, 20. So what would you say for biggest tips or advice to, aspiring football coaches now? What would you say for biggest advice or tips to new coaches?
Probably the biggest thing I would say is, and I think I was kind of that way. I come in and said, here's what we're going to do. And by God, get on there, down, set up, let's go. And I acted like I really knew what was going on. And sometimes I didn't. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Or if a kid asks you a question you don't know, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. I'll find out. Let's work through that. And let's figure that out. And then, as we said earlier, just kind of coach to your strengths, to your team's strengths, not so much your strengths, but to the players, what they do well, just figure out what's going to work with them and go for it. And kind of like I end every parents meeting, like I said, we just had it last night, was, and I mean this to the parents, but it's also to the kids. I mean, some of these guys take it so serious, which I agree. There was probably first 15 years of my career. I mean, it's win or it's a terrible day. I'm probably more interested in making kids accountable and responsible and just good kids than so much the winning. And then the winning will come if you don't worry about this. By God, all we got to do is win. But a lot of times that comes once you've relaxed a little bit and kind of take a look back. But one of the things that I was telling them was to keep everything in perspective. I mean, in the big picture, there's a 20 billion Chinaman that could care less if Osborne wins the game or not, or even has a game, or even has football, to where it's not life or death. It's a bunch of kids playing a game. Go out there, teach them the best that you can. And, with all the safety things they have now, make sure you're up on that, on how to tackle and the heat and the concussions and all that good stuff. But like I say, bottom line is when they graduate, when they're done, they played that last game, whether it's week 9 or week 13 in the state championship, most of those guys are done. They'll probably never play again. So just make sure they enjoy it and do just keep that in perspective. Hopefully they come out of it as better people, better men than when they came in.
Coach, thanks again for your time and for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. And I think this is a really neat thing that you're doing with this stuff. As you know, I'm not real technologically sound, so I don't know too much about this stuff, but I think it's neat that we're getting the word out there. So thanks for having me.
Again, that was head coach Steve Tiernan, head coach of the Osborne Bulldogs of Osborne, Kansas, heading into his 20th season overall as head coach, heading into his 8th overall season there at Osborne. Good luck to you this season, coach, and thanks again for coming on the podcast today. And that's going to do it for this episode of the 8-Man Breakdowns podcast. Remember, videos come out every Tuesday night, so be sure to tune in. If you have a question for me, the best way to reach me is by commenting in the comment section below. If you've learned anything or enjoyed any of these videos, please click subscribe and check out some of my other videos right here on the screen. And like always, thanks for tuning in, guys.